The people of Ravenshire, Maine, loved Halloween. Every year, the town hosted a grand pumpkin festival in the square, filling the streets with orange light and laughter. But this year, something different was brewing, something darker. For the first time, the pumpkins had been grown by a newcomer, Old Man Crowley, who lived on the outskirts in a house surrounded by dead cornfields. No one knew where he came from. He just appeared one spring morning, selling the biggest, most perfect pumpkins anyone had ever seen. By October, every house had a Crowley pumpkin on their porch. And that's when the strange things began. The first incident happened on Willow Street. A woman screamed when she noticed her jack-o'-lantern leaking a dark red liquid onto the porch. The smell was coppery, like blood. The next morning, the pumpkin was gone. Then it happened again. And again. Each time, the pumpkins disappeared by dawn, leaving behind smears of red and claw-like marks on the wood. Teenagers dared each other to visit Crowley's farm. Only one group did. They came back pale and silent, refusing to talk. A week later, their houses stood empty, doors open, rooms cold. The pumpkins they'd carved had all been smashed to pulp. When Halloween night arrived, the festival went on as planned, though tension hung thick in the air. The mayor gave his usual speech, lanterns glowed, and laughter returned, until someone noticed the man at the edge of the crowd. Crowley. He stood perfectly still, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His coat was covered in dirt, his hands stained orange and red. He carried a pumpkin, huge, round, and strangely alive, its surface pulsing faintly as if something inside was breathing. When the mayor stepped forward, Crowley spoke for the first time. His voice was low and rasped like wind through a graveyard. "You've taken from the soil without giving back," he said. "Tonight, the harvest takes you." The pumpkin in his arm split open with a wet crack. A thick vine shot out, wrapping around his arm. Then another burst forth, latching onto the ground. The crowd screamed as pumpkins all over the square began to shake, cracking open like eggs. From within, hands emerged, small, human hands, slick and red. Faces followed, carved like jack-o'-lanterns, but with real eyes glowing from inside. The streets ran with orange pulp and blood. When the sun rose, Ravensshire was silent. Only the pumpkins remained, each one perfectly carved, each one smiling wide with teeth that were unmistakably human. Every small town has its ghost story, but in Salem Ridge, Massachusetts, there was only one legend parents warned their kids about, the Pumpkin Man. They said he was the spirit of a farmer wronged a century ago, burned alive, after being accused of witchcraft. Every Halloween, he returned to collect the souls of anyone who disrespected the pumpkin, symbols of the harvest and death. 10-year-old Benji Cole believed every word. His older sister, Mara, did not. "Pumpkin Man's just a story for babies," she teased, carving a grin into her pumpkin. "He's not real." But Benji's eyes were wide with fear. "You're not supposed to break them," he whispered. "If you destroy a jack-o'-lantern before midnight, he comes for you." That night, as the trick-or-treaters filled the streets, Mara decided to prove her point. She took their pumpkin from the porch and smashed it against the driveway. The candle flickered out, and for a brief second, the wind stopped. "See," she said. "Nothing happened." But at midnight, something did. The air turned colder than ice, and a deep, rhythmic thump echoed outside, slow footsteps dragging through fallen leaves. Benji peeked through the curtain. Under the streetlight stood a tall figure, a scarecrow-like man with a pumpkin for a head, glowing faintly from within. His smile was carved too wide, his eyes too deep. "Mara," Benji whispered. "He's here." They hid under the table as the front door creaked open. The smell of soil and rot filled the house. The sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moved through the living room. "Mara," a voice rasped. It was dry, hollow, like wind through dead trees. "You broke the promise." Mara grabbed Benji's hand. They ran upstairs, slamming the door behind them. She turned off the lights. Silence. Then, tap tap tap, something scraping against the window. Benji looked out and screamed. A vine had climbed up the wall, wrapping around the frame. At the end of it hung a grinning pumpkin, its mouth moving. "Once broken, always broken," it whispered. They bolted into the hallway, but the walls were changing. Paint peeled, wood warped, and vines crawled along the ceiling like veins. The house was alive. They ran into their parents' room. Empty. The bed was covered in orange dust. Suddenly, Mara was yanked backward. A vine wrapped around her ankle, pulling her toward the stairs. Benji grabbed her hand, crying, "Don't let go." But the vine tightened, dragging her screaming into the darkness below. Then silence. When Benji crept downstairs, the living room was empty. The front door hung open. On the porch sat a freshly carved pumpkin. Its face was Mara's. The next morning, the police found Benji sitting cross-legged beside it, whispering softly. He was unhurt, but wouldn't speak. Years passed, and the house was sold. Benji was sent away to a care home. But every Halloween, a new pumpkin appeared on that porch, each one carved with the face of someone from the neighborhood who had gone missing. Some said Benji escaped and returned each year to carve them himself. Others said he never left, that he lived under the earth with the Pumpkin Man, helping him finish what was started. The legend grew. Parents began warning their children never to smash a pumpkin, never to mock the harvest. And if you walk through Salem Ridge on Halloween night, you might see a boy standing in the fog, humming an old tune, his eyes empty and his hands stained orange. Musical note: once broken, always broken. In the quiet suburbs of Salem Ridge, Massachusetts, kids whispered about a legend, the Pumpkin Man, a scarecrow spirit that came every Halloween to claim the soul of anyone who broke a jack-o'-lantern before midnight. Most brushed it off as a ghost story. But 10-year-old Benji believed it. His sister, Mara, didn't. On Halloween night, she smashed their pumpkin just to tease him. "See? No Pumpkin Man," she laughed. But that night, the wind outside howled like a voice. The candles flickered out. And in the backyard, something moved among the shadows. Benji looked through his window and saw it, the shape of a tall, thin figure wearing tattered overalls and a pumpkin for a head, its carved grin glowing faintly in the dark. "Mara," he whispered. "He's here." They ran downstairs, but the front door was already open. Cold air swept in, carrying the smell of dirt and decay. Footprints made of mud, and something red, led toward the woods behind their house. They followed them, calling for help. Then they saw him again. The Pumpkin Man. His eyes burned like embers, and his voice was a whisper that filled the trees. "Once broken, always broken." He lifted his hand. A vine shot from the ground, wrapping around Mara's ankle. Benji grabbed her, pulling hard, but the vine dragged her screaming into the darkness. The next morning, only Benji was found, sitting in the yard, whispering to a pumpkin he had carved himself. Years passed. Benji never spoke again. But every Halloween, a new pumpkin appeared on the porch, carved with a different face from the neighborhood. Some said he carved them himself. Others whispered that the pumpkin man never left, he just found a new helper. And if you listen closely on Halloween night, you can still hear Benji humming softly in the dark. Musical note: once broken, always broken.